Good morning. Welcome to Gen Taub Live. And I've always promised you that I will do my best never to show Donald Trump's face and voice. And that holds true for today. But I never promised you there would be no math. And I want to welcome you in to something that might, I don't know, give you the heebie jeebies. Some people don't like math. I promise you, you will like this because this is a situation. Some people feel stupid when they do math, right? They feel like it's complicated, it's hard, and it intimidates them. If you're one of those people, this is the show for you because this may be one of the first times in your life that you will leave a conversation feeling smarter than the math that they are trying to shove down your throat. Specifically, I have never seen anything stupider and just stupider in an economic sense, stupider in terms of they think this makes sense and they're going to fool us, and stupider in terms of why are the people around Donald Trump who know better not throwing in the towel and quitting. So, today, my friends, we really are going to talk about what Donald Trump did yesterday, which is launch what will be the biggest tax hike in US history. People are calling it the biggest tax hike since 1968. Well, it's the biggest ever. The import taxes, that's what a tariff is. The import taxes that Donald Trump is imposing, his Treasury Secretary yesterday said, will bring in $6 trillion. And who is going to pay those $6 trillion? Well, it's going to be you and I, because those costs will be passed along into the products that we buy. So let's just look at that. It's not just me saying this is the biggest tax hike in US history, right? It's Republicans who are willing to speak out, like, if you can believe it, Rand Paul, as well as Democrats who understand what the fuck is going on here, like Senator Mark Warner, Hakeem Jeffries, and pretty much anyone who has a brain and a pulse should get how fucked up this is. So, on its surface, let's just be absolutely clear, this is a ginormous tax hike. Secondly, let's be clear, it is a tax and it's paid by US businesses when they import these goods into the United States, whether it's a finished product or an input. Now, third thing, no one anticipated Donald Trump would do this in this fashion. The other day, when he said it was going to be reciprocal tariffs, Wall Street took that in and thought they knew what a reciprocal tariff was, a reciprocal import tax. They thought, okay, if another country charges 10% when US goods are imported to the people, let's say, a country in Europe, let's imagine they charge 10%. Or let's say, I don't know, a country in South Asia, when US goods come in, they charge 10%. Everyone thought, okay, well, the US will slap on a 10% reciprocal tariff. So it would be matched. That's what everyone thought it meant. And they also thought it was stupid because that would end up just ratcheting things up, okay, whatever. But maybe they thought, okay, that will be the end of it. But when it was announced yesterday, Donald Trump held a press conference after the markets closed at 4 p.m. And he revealed that he was not actually calculating a reciprocal tariff, reciprocal import taxes at all. Instead, he was coming up with the fucking craziest formula that no one could have predicted because it makes no sense in terms of what he said he was going to do, right? And it just sent shockwaves through the markets. Now, I know, as I said, the US exchange closed by that time. but people can trade in futures. We can see the impact. The market opens today at 9:30. Everyone's predicting it's going to be an absolute bloodbath. After hours trading in some companies' stock has plummeted, especially those that rely on any kind of imports or do manufacturing in these countries abroad. So let me tell you, please come with me so you can understand this. And there's a reason why understanding this is good. This isn't just, okay, now you'll know. You need to know this because it looks like there is a crack in the Republican Party's willingness to put up with this. And just yesterday in the Senate, there were enough Republicans that it resulted in prohibiting Donald Trump from imposing these new tariffs, these new import taxes on goods from Canada. There, I believe it was Rand Paul, Mitch McConnell, Susan Collins, and Lisa Murkowski, and they were enough to stop him. You know, Congress can stop him. So let's talk about what's going on so you know and you're not fooled. Okay, so this is me the moment it's Walton Goggins on the left. If you are a fan of White Lotus, you'll know what this incredulous stare is. No spoilers. Anyhow, I felt like that man when I read about this shocking tax hike. Again, this is the largest tax increase in American history. And what shocked me about it is as it unfolded yesterday, and I'm hearing about what was going on, I was like, wait a minute, are you fucking kidding me? So I'm going to walk you through this 3 different times till it kind of groks for you. And it won't be like repeating myself 3 different times. It's going to be 3 different angles at the same thing. So let's start with James Surowiecki. He was the first person who really said, holy shit, I think I know what's going on. Now, he is a journalist. He writes for the New Yorker, right? That literary magazine, who actually knows how to do some math. So let me tell you what James said. This is last night. He said, I just figured out where these fake rates came from. They didn't actually calculate import rates or the tariff rates and non-tariff barriers as they said they did. Instead, for every country, they just took our trade deficit with that country and divided it by the total country's export to us. Okay, and then they divided that, cut that in half. Now, I'm gonna take the words away from you and say what he's saying. Um, I'm gonna give you real countries in a moment. But just so you can be clear, when we talk about trade deficits, if you're not aware, I think this is pretty straightforward. So apologize if it seems like I'm talking down to you, but I want to lay out the basics. If the United States, I'm going to pick a country called Narnia. Thank you, C.S. Lewis. So there's a country called Narnia. And let's say we sell things to Narnia, and Narnia sells its delicious Turkish delight or whatever that was called. They sell these delicious candies to us and we sell things to them as well. And so let's say Narnia sells $100 billion worth of stuff to us, right? But we only sell $80 billion to Narnia. What is our trade deficit? Like we sell cars and fruits and vegetables, but that candy is so flippin' good. They sell $100 billion. 100 minus 80 is 20 billion. The trade deficit means that is basically that they're exporting to us $20 billion more of stuff than we are to them. So what is the calculation? Let me tell you again. He said you take the amount. Okay, so you take our trade deficit with them, $20 billion, and you divide it by 100 billion. Okay, that's how much they totally export to us. And 20 divided by 100. Can you do the math? What percent is that? Can you do the math here? I think you can. That's 2. You can make it down to 10, 1/5. That's 20%. And then they divided by that by 2 and said, okay, we're going to put a 10% tariff on your goods. I shit you not. And let's go back to Narnia. Let's say Narnia loves American stuff. And when we sell $80 billion of cars and vegetables to Narnia, they don't put a single penny of a tariff, an import tax at all. So a reciprocal tariff would mean we would charge them nothing. Narnia doesn't impose import taxes on our stuff, so we wouldn't on theirs. That's a reciprocal tariff. But no, Donald Trump instead decided to do some formula by dividing the trade deficit with Narnia, divided by how much they exported to us to come up with a figure, 20%, but that sounded too fucking high, so they just divided it by 2. That is what happened. So there are countries that have super high tariffs that they charge big import taxes on American goods who have a very low import tax we're charging. So that is the deal, my friends. Okay. So this is instead of the Narnia example, James uses a real country. Okay. And he doesn't use numbers like me that were easy. So he goes, okay, we have a $17.9 billion trade deficit with Indonesia. It exports to us, it exports $28 billion in goods to us, right? Okay, that means we export less to them. Okay, so the difference between how much we send to India and how much we import from India is 17.9 billion. He divided by that by 28, it got to 64%. That seems too high, so he just divided it by 2. And then this is a chart. He went country by country. Now, did you hear what I fucking just said? Do you guys in the chat get my Narnia example? Do you understand? This is not, well, these countries are imposing import taxes on us. Let's equalize it. This is a fucking shit show. Now, I want to, because when James Surecki realized what the hell was going on, because, I think that it will go into this a little more. We get Benjamin Applebaum over at the New York Times. And he says this last night at 9:32 p.m. He goes, just to recap, the reciprocal, shit, I got to tell you this other thing. So here's the other deal. Let's say there's a place that doesn't export. I'm sorry. Let's say our number came down to less than 10%. I mean, let's imagine for a moment that instead, that with Narnia, instead of a 20 bill, let's say they exported to us only $90 billion of that delicious candy. And actually, I don't want to do more math, but let's imagine for a second that the figure, when you divided the trade deficit by the total exports, was less than 20. Let's say when you divided it by 2. So you go, from 20%, it went down to 10 for us. Let's say instead the calculation was 8%, you divide by 2, and it was only 4. Anything less than 10%, Donald Trump just bumped it to 10%. This is why this is the most insane thing. If a country didn't export anything to us, I don't know, let's say a nation was an uninhabited island with no people and therefore no exports. They still put in their fucking spreadsheet 10%. Okay. The best people. So Benjamin Applebaum of the New York Times editorial board said this. Okay. And yes, Mary Richnick, yes, remember he bankrupted a casino. Okay. So just to recap, this is Benjamin Applebaum. 1, the reciprocal tariffs are not reciprocal. The rates announced by Trump are unrelated to the tariffs, the import taxes charged by other countries. And he gives an example. Imports from Brazil, which imposes relatively high tariffs on us, will face lower rates than countries that impose little or no tariffs on our goods. Okay, 2, it gets crazier and crazier, you guys. 2, later, the White House says that the rates are based on the size of the other nation's trade surpluses because that's the sum of all cheating. Okay, so the where he got this, and Benjamin says this is crazy, but it's also true. So let me just be clear. He starts out by saying, oh, yeah, we are imposing tariffs on goods from countries that have the same, to equalize it, to bring it up to what they said. And if they're doing any kind of other stuff, uh, they sort of were vague, right? That they're going to get at. Now they're, or any kind of cheating. Okay, a trade surplus from Narnia or Indonesia or any other country is not them cheating. It's American demands for the goods from those countries. This goes back to, this isn't just about cheap goods from China. This goes back to the economist Ricardo, who talks about comparative advantage. Do you remember learning this? If you studied this, one country has really good wine and they can specialize in wine, other has cheese, other has cars, blah, blah, blah. And you know what? If you want, if you want more from another place, if it's less expensive and so on, maybe we import more from one country, but we export more to a different one. That's how trade works. It is not cheating. He calls it cheating because everything to him that's not money in his pocket is cheating. Now, let's add, Benjamin Apollon goes on from there. First of all, he said, the White House calculations apparently only include trade in goods, not services. That makes our trade imbalances look a lot worse than they actually are, because of course we export services to other countries. And then he said, we have a trade deficit just generally worldwide in goods of $1.2 trillion. That means we import $1.2 trillion from other world markets more than we export. But we have a surplus in services of 293 billion. Fine. Now, he also says, second of all, Trump set the minimum tariff rate at 10%. I mentioned to this issue earlier, even for countries that don't have a trade surplus with the United States. So Australia doesn't have a trade surplus. It buys more stuff from us than it sells to us, but he still slapped on a 10% tariff. This is why Wall Street is freaking out. He said reciprocal tariffs. This is not the case. Okay, more from Benjamin. Okay, sorry. This is the last thing, and you have heard of this. The tariffs hit Antarctic islands that are inhabited by 0 humans and many penguins. This is how stupid he is. Okay, and this is my favorite post. Some guy named Matt Buck. He was quoting an article in a British publication, but there was a paywall, and I didn't have time to subscribe to it. So this is a quote from that article. It's hard to state just how nonsensical that actually is. You might as well divide the numbers of apples in your kitchen by the numbers of bagels and use it to calculate your mortgage rate. I can't. It's so funny. I have one apple in my kitchen, but I have no bagel, so I guess I don't have a mortgage. To criticize it on political or economic grounds is too generous. It operates below the level of rational thought. Below the level of rational thought. Okay. Now, more on the stupid math. I promised you that you were going to get this, right? When I use the Narnia example, I think that helps. But I want to share with you how the world is also kind of scratching its head. If the world had a head to scratch, I mean, people in the world. Okay, so we get someplace called BBC Verify. I thought this was a really good website. And they put out a piece, and they said, the US President Donald Trump imposed a 10% tariff on goods from most countries when they're imported into the US, and even higher rates for countries that he called the worst offenders. And so BBC Verify, specifically Ben Chu and Tom Edgington, said, how exactly were these tariffs, essentially taxes on imports, worked out? That's the British way of saying calculated. BBC Verify has been looking at the calculations behind the numbers. Okay, so the White House put this formula up that was designed to intimidate you. Because what do these symbols mean? And I am scared this looks worse than algebra. Well, fuck that shit, you guys. Here is the simple calculation. Instead of Narnia, let's talk about Europe. We have a trade deficit in goods with the entire European Union, all the countries in Europe, of 235 billion. Okay, roughly 236 because it's billion. That means we import 235 plus $1 billion of goods from Europe more than we export. Doesn't mean we export none, but that's the difference. Now, the total amount of goods we import from the EU are 605 billion, right? So if you do the math here, you divide the trade deficit figure by the entire amount of imports, and this came up with 39%. So they divided that by 2 and came up with a 20% import tariff. Okay. That is the calculation. That is it. That is it. Now, how are they justifying this? Donald Trump is justifying this by saying, oh, well, they're cheating because they sell more stuff to us. But then he's calling it Liberation Day because he's saying, I want everyone to have to buy US goods. He is not anticipating a trade war at all. And in fact, I do have to share with you what Secretary Bissett had to say to other countries in the world. And there's a reason why someone on my blue sky said he sounded like Brock Turner, AKA the Stanford rapist. I want to say that the suggestion here for them to just take it and not fight back is apt. Let's listen to him speaking to Caitlin Collins on CNN last night.
And should we view these as permanent?
That, I think we're going to wait and see how this plays out.
And if countries retaliate, which some have said that they would, some have said they wanted to wait and see, what is the White House's response going to be to those countries?
Well, Caitlin, one of the messages that I'd like to get out tonight is everybody sit back, take a deep breath, don't immediately retaliate. Let's see where this goes, because if you retaliate, that's how we get escalation. And
then it becomes a full-fledged trade war, in your view?
Not a trade war, depends on the country. But remember that the history of trade is we are the deficit country. The deficit country has an advantage. They are the surplus countries. The surplus countries traditionally always lose any kind of a trade escalation. So
Wow. This is so offensive. It's so offensive. We have this morning in the news, the reaction across the globe is that this is the equivalent, an equivalent. I mean, literally, they just said this is the economic equivalent. I forgot who in Europe said this, the economic, because I just listened to Morning Joe as I was getting ready today. Someone said this was I think Steve Ratner reported this, or Joe reported this, Joe Scarborough, that in Europe, they are viewing this as the economic equivalent of Russia's physical attack on Ukraine. This is an attack on the world global markets. Now, I think you need to know, too, that what Donald Trump announced yesterday is on top of any pre-existing tariffs he announced. So let's listen to what Caitlin Collins asked Bissett about China.
Tariff. China has this 34% tariff. There were already 20% tariffs in place on China. So is that 34% on top of that, meaning it's a 54% reciprocal tariff on China?
I believe it is.
Okay. And so when you look at,
I believe it is. Like, the dude wasn't in the room when this was negotiated. He's the fucking Treasury Secretary, guys. I mean, I just need to hold this for a moment. Now, I realize, guys, there were other things in the news. Again, devastating cuts to the FDA and CDC. I get that. But today I'm really just focusing on this, in part because I have to like literally dash to the airport because I'm going to a conference in California at Stanford University on global capitalism. That is going to be on Friday and Saturday. And I'm mentioning this because I found out that you can actually watch this conference. It's free to zoom into it. And I just want to give you, this yikes, um, this link so you can register online if you want. It's called Global Capitalism, Trust and Accountability. And I know you might be thinking, why the hell would we want to go to an academic conference? But let me tell you why the hell you would. The keynote speaker at this conference is going to be Tom Wright. He is one of the co-authors of The $1 Billion Whale. About the subtitle is The Man Who Fooled Wall Street, Hollywood and the World. This is about this Malaysian hedge fund that was a big scam. He also is part of or started the Brazen Project, and he did this incredible podcast on Fat Leonard. Anyhow, so he is going to be one of the keynote speakers. He's the keynote speaker on Friday. And then our keynote speaker, these are, I think they're all at lunch. So it'd be morning time for you on the East Coast. Our keynote speaker on day 2 is going to be Jed Rakoff, an amazing federal judge. So I'm going to drop that in the chat. And there it is. I encourage you, if you want to, you can register and just pop in when you feel like it. I am the discussant, which is kind of like a moderator, but not exactly, on one of the panels in the afternoon that deals with white collar crime and corruption. So I'm psyched about that. But long story made short, I have to make this show short today. So I'm hoping you enjoyed the math, and I've now got some crazy town. The craziest thing, by the way, will be when you watch the market at 9:30 today. So, but let me just play a little crazy town music for you. Crazy town. This is Howard Lutnick, our Commerce Secretary. And I just got to play this for you, talk about it, and then play you out. Okay, here we go.
European Union won't take chicken from America. They won't take lobsters from America. They hate our beef because our beef is beautiful and theirs is weak.
Oh my fucking God. Now, do you know why? I just found out yesterday why they apparently won't take chicken from us. I think it's because we have these giant factory farms, and apparently like we bleach our chicken or something. I don't know. I'm not an expert on beautiful beef or chicken, my friends. But Donald Trump said he was going to impose reciprocal tariffs. Donald Trump did not say, that he was going to do what you see on this chart. He did not say he was going to come up with some batshit crazy calculation and take the entire trade deficit and divide it by the imports we get from Europe and then divide that by 2. This is just crazy town. And again, one last bit. This is my favorite crazy of the crazy town. Again, you might as well divide the numbers of apples in your kitchen by the number of bagels and use it to calculate your mortgage. To criticize what is going on here on political or economics grounds is too generous. It operates below the level of rational thought. And you know what operates below the level of rational thought? It is Crazy Town. Welcome to Crazy Town.